Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the faker's gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
But yeah, if you are at all like into coffee, go to your local Starbucks and ask them if they have a Clover machine. It's not something that every Starbucks has, and we've looked into this, and the machine costs like $10,000 or something crazy.
I did hear about this. You probably told me about it though.
They're it's any given coffee that they have, they can make in the Clover machine, but they also have coffees that they'll only make in the Clover machine. And like it's just really excellent coffee. So if you are the kind of person who like really appreciates good coffee, who's like a snob like me, go there and ask if they have it. See if you can find a Starbucks that does. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It's like $5 for a cup of black coffee, but like, man, it's worth it.
Welcome to Making Luck, a coffee podcast.
Yeah.
My name is Adam. Hi. And with me is Jake. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I don't want to talk about that. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah.
I'm feeling better physically than last week.
Good.
I guess I really shouldn't talk about the details of that on the podcast either, because that's not attractive. And to celebrate, I have some cookies here.
Yeah.
My wife and I found this bakery near us. It is Indian pastry. And if you've ever been to the Indian restaurant we go to, you would be wary of Indian desserts. But these cookies are pretty good.
It's buffet desserts in general, right? Like, I mean, I can't
Okay, that's fair.
I can't think of very many buffets that like have like an excellent dessert bar. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I offered these before and you refused. Do you want one of these?
I am totally good, thank you.
All right. Now I've had a couple bites of these. These are shortbread cookies, and they're drier than one would expect American cookies to be. But we're gonna try this one. It looks like it has some kind of preserves or maybe like a lemon jam in the middle of shortbread, which actually doesn't make sense, but I think that's what it is. Let's give this a shot.
Has a crunch to it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's still like soft, like that sandy kind of texture.
Okay.
It's like an orange marmalade, or maybe like a bergamot filling.
Okay.
The tart orange. It actually doesn't make much sense with the shortbread, but whatever. Oh god. This is the chocolate one. I just dropped it on the floor, but
5-second rule.
I'm gonna pick the dog hairs off of it because this is worth it.
He's actually there are actually like visible dog hairs that he's picking off of the cookie.
I had a bite of this one. It's worth it. Non-American chocolate, I like it a lot.
Yeah, me too.
It's like milk chocolate, and I like white chocolate and milk chocolate. The dark chocolate is definitely not for me.
They actually like make it with
Typical man.
It's like there's like I know what it is with British chocolate. It's because they use milk instead of sugar. It's like Cadbury chocolate tends to be quite good, I think, just because of that. But I don't know. I mean,
good.
I still think like Hershey's chocolate is still some of the best chocolate I've ever had. And
Milk chocolate.
I've had a lot of fancy chocolate. Yeah.
Milk chocolate. Anyway, these cookies were good. They were a little expensive, but you know, we got a lot of them, so we got a little bit of a discount.
Seems like they were worth it, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta live a little.
All right. Well. Anyway, one more thing before we get into the real content of this episode, which you might have started listening for. There is Gen Con events. Gen Con, you know, the board gaming convention in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
That happens every summer. The events just went live this weekend. And you may have noticed, and I've said this before to my IRL tournament circles, but the a normal like world championship that Rio Grande, the publisher, hosts at Gen Con is not happening this year. And, rumor has it it's kind of been on the verge of not happening for many years now. And finally, Jay, the CEO, has, he's decided to not chicken out. We're not having it, and they're just going to do their normal RGG stuff. And, like, I understand, they put a lot of money into it and a lot of time, and,
Sure.
They just don't feel like doing it anymore. With that said, obviously my own tournament is not going to revolve around that anymore, but also there is an unofficial Dominion tournament that I know of. I've been in contact with the TO. As of recording this, which is roughly a day after the events went live, it filled up. So, rip that. There were only 16 slots in the tournament.
Sure.
So,
someone's saying, like, you can't... I mean, Gen Con events, if you go there, like, people don't show up to those. So if it's something you're interested in and you're going to be at Gen Con, you might as well at least, like, show up to it and ask if there's an open spot. You never know. So,
you can buy generics and wait on standby. The other thing you can do, actually, is you can contact me, and I can get you in contact with the TO. He has said if there's enough interest and he thinks he could fill it, the next step up would be moving it from 16 players to 64 players, which would probably...
There's no in between. It just goes from 16 to 64.
Yeah, it's 4-player games.
Oh, okay.
And it's single elimination.
Gotcha.
So it's adding another round to it.
Okay.
So yes, it goes from 16 to 64.
That's hilarious.
The prize is a laser-etched Dominion storage box of some kind. The guy who runs it designs these things, and so I'm going to maybe see if I can get him to help me with some of the stuff for my tournaments. He actually doesn't live too far away from here. But anyway, I can get you in... If there's a big clamoring of desire for this, it's not impossible that the format could be extended. I'm not going to be going to Gen Con this year. I've got other plans this summer, and they're more important than Gen Con. We'll get to that later. But anyway, wanted to let people know about that, and also, I do have a Facebook group where if you're in the Midwest of the USA or anywhere nearby, you can get notified of any kind of events like this that are going to happen. So I know this same guy is hoping to run something at Origins in the future. I don't know if he's planning on doing anything this year. I kind of doubt it, but he mentioned next year. And then also he wanted me to help him run the following year's Gen Con stuff, and I was like, oh boy. I mean, I could do that, but that's a story for a different day. I don't know if I'll be able to go to that Gen Con as well. But, hey, I want to at least start promoting that tournament because, it's Dominion, and I like it when people play Dominion. It's super great.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, so for sure. Yeah, sounds good. Are you going to be playing in the tournament, by the way?
At Gen Con?
Yeah.
I'm not going to Gen Con at all.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Rip.
You want me to bring you back a hot dog from the concession stand?
There were a lot of ways you could complete that sentence that I would have said yes to, but that was not one of them. But I appreciate the thought.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe something a little less perishable.
If there is anything that is going to be at Gen Con that you're interested in, let me know. I can,
Actually, I might want you to take the video and show up at the tournament and interview the winner or something.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
So we may have something like that for the podcast when the time comes.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm down.
Speaking of Dominion, sometimes we talk about it on this podcast.
Yeah, in fact, just last week we did an episode
on Dominion
about the thing
comparing.
Dominion. Yeah, we were talking about villages and what do you do when you're comparing these two villages, two sources of the same effect, and. That was the episode, and then this episode is going to be about Vampire.
Sick.
But before we get to that, we should probably talk about the kingdom that we played that was, follow-up to that episode.
Sure. So let me read the cards to you.
Sounds good.
We have Native Village, Improve, Shantytown, Moneylender, Nomad Camp, Talisman, Rabble, Relic, Royal Seal, Tragic Hero, and we had Inheritance and Keep. One more time for our audio-only listeners. Native Village, Improve, Shantytown, Moneylender, Nomad Camp, Talisman, Rabble, Relic, Royal Seal, Tragic Hero, And we had inheritance and keep.
So, if you remember at the end of the last episode, we didn't actually have a ton of disagreement in terms of what we were going to go for, what we thought was going to be good. And I think we still don't. I think for the most part, the kingdom played out the way we expected it to. But maybe we should describe sort of what that looks like.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I think we both agreed you want to open with a moneylender, and you would prefer to get a silver with it. On a 5-2, you suck it up and get the native village, but you still get that moneylender to open with, right?
Yeah, I never had a 5-2 actually, but
I did in a bot game.
I think that you do. I think you go moneylender, native village, and cry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
manly tears.
I didn't shed any manly tears, but I was playing a bot, so
yeah. I mean, like, it's not the end of the world. You're down. You have a native village instead of a silver in your deck, so like, you're not probably going to be hitting 5 again anytime soon. I mean, you could.
Hey, it could happen.
You could with
hashtag believe.
Yeah, you could hit 5 with just the moneylender.
Yeah,
but like, it's not super likely, and you're certainly not likely to be hitting 6 or 7 anytime soon, which of course are important price points here.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned this out loud, but you do want to put a number of silvers in the deck. I think we said the first 5 was relic, which, is a lot like a silver.
Yeah.
But I think, that silver you open with is probably not the last silver.
Yeah,
I think putting at least a second and possibly a third silver in soon is quite good.
Yeah, I put my second silver in the second shuffle. If I had a hand that didn't hit 5, basically I put a silver in, because like, having that extra silver in, obviously the silver is going to give you value throughout the game because most of the cards you're wanting to buy are kind of expensive, but 5 and up. But also, having 2 silvers and a moneylender in the deck is when you can kind of start taking inheritance seriously. It's kind of when you can start saying like, oh, I could actually hit inheritance, is the point where you've got 2 silvers and your moneylender, and then you could kind of make it happen.
Yeah, I think games are won and lost many times by who gets an early inheritance.
Okay.
And silver is pretty good for that.
That seemed to be the case here, but I will say that, like, it wasn't like the kind of inheritance board that, like, I sometimes see where it's like, oh, I have inheritance, now I have this huge advantage. I mean, like, it's big, like, turning your states into native villages is good, and native village is the target. I mean, I don't know what else you would do.
Resign.
Yeah. But, like, I mean, I guess inheritance is so good that I guess I'm a little spoiled on it having a better target than native village.
Hey, it's still great, though. There's no other way to thin the estates.
Yeah, right.
And also it makes your future native villages worth an extra point.
Yeah.
But then you can't gain multiples with talisman. Hashtag edge cased.
With Wandering. Oh, wait. He's not here.
That'll be a future episode.
Yeah.
By the way, like, we're seriously considering doing an episode, Edge Case with Wandering Winder.
Yeah.
If you don't want to hear that, you should probably speak up.
It's gonna happen. Yeah, so, okay. So, we've talked about our first 5 is Relic, and then you're trying to hit, you've got a couple of silvers, a moneylender, and a Relic in the deck. You're trying to hit Inheritance. What else are you doing? Well, you're
spamming Tragic Heroes.
Yeah, just about. I mean, so you're spamming Tragic Heroes partially because you've got a bunch of native villages in the deck because you just inherited them.
Yeah.
And so this Smithy variant becomes quite good, and so, it's got the buy as well.
Yeah, the buy is a big deal, and blowing it up to get a treasure is a big deal with keep around.
Having that option later in the game, yeah, that's quite good because you can, like, your opponent can't really leave piles too low because, keep points can always be manipulated with Tragic Hero blow-ups.
Yeah, I mean, you say having that option later in the game. I think doing it later in the game is really good.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you can.
I mean, yeah, I guess option is being generous because it's usually, like, going to happen or it's not.
Right. I didn't find myself with much control over whether or not I could do this.
That's true.
So I think the point... we had originally chosen this kingdom because Jake first saw it and he was like, oh, Shantytown is better than Native Village for this deck. And then by the time we recorded the episode, Jake was like, okay, Native Village is a good card for this deck, and probably you want more of those in Shantytowns.
Yeah.
And I think the why behind that is a little bit illuminating, and also when to break that and go for the Shantytown.
Sure.
I think it goes back to a point that we were making in the last episode, especially with villages. the number of cards that you draw with that village is going to be really significant. And in a lot of cases, let's say you can't expect to draw the cards off Shantytown, then you're going to prefer Native Village, because even though Native Village doesn't draw you the one entire card per play, it's drawing you more than 0, which is what you can expect out of Shantytown if your deck isn't going to be capable of getting that.
Yeah, I mean, like, Shantytown kind of rewards you for having flexibility with the order you play your cards in.
And that means that extra actions.
Right, and that flexibility is usually only, like, given to you by villages. So, like, the
other villages besides Shantytown.
Exactly. So, like, the thing is that the native village, the Shantytown for most of the game, is effectively drawing you 0 cards. You can get lucky and it draws you 2, but, like...
But if your name is Adam Horton, you can't.
Yeah, I'm not going to rely on that until I've got a bunch of native villages in my deck. Once I've inherited native village, and I've got a few, maybe from estates or other native villages I've gotten, then I started actually taking the Shantytowns.
Yeah, you can, like, splash a couple of those bad boys.
Yeah, not too many. Don't go crazy. And, like...
I wouldn't say more than 2.
Because, yeah, the native villages draw you a maximum of 1 card. Depending on how,
it's actually less.
But yeah, it's weird. Whereas the Shantytowns can draw you more than that.
It's an asymptotic maximum.
Right, and you can, I mean, the having the bunch of native villages gives you the flexibility to let your Shantytowns draw cards. You lose flexibility in terms of, like, not getting to take stuff off your native village bat when maybe you wanted to, and you can draw them in bad situations. But anyway, not a huge deal, because, like, if you just leave the Shantytowns alone,
they'll leave you alone.
Yeah, you're not.
They're more afraid of you than you're afraid of them.
Right. Yeah. They're not. You're not losing out on a huge amount of deck potential, but you know it can be nice to have a few.
Yeah, it wasn't awful, but like, I mean, I would say the bread and butter village, the hashtag bread and butter village, is native village. That's what I want to inherit, and that's what I want to be thinking. Oh, this is where my actions are coming from.
Yeah, and so from there, you kind of just build up in payload.
You just play normal.
Yeah.
Normal Dominion.
You just spam a bunch of tragic heroes and villages. At a certain point, you get some royal seals, possibly some talismans if you need the points.
Area control for keep, man.
Yeah, and
sometimes you get a copper.
Yeah, I actually did get a
victory copper
in one of the
sick.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, not a lot to say about that board, I guess.
Yeah, not a lot more.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I just want to take one more bite of this cookie because I've been staring at it and it looks so good.
All right. So Adam's doing that. I'm going to go ahead and read the text of Vampire. Vampire is a knight card. It's also an attack from the Nocturne expansion. So this is just a knight card. It's not an action. So like you only get to play this in the knight phase. And it says each other player receives the next hex. Gain a card costing up to 5 other than Vampire, and then exchange this for a bat. And Vampire itself costs 5s. That's important. So, each other player takes a hex when you play the Vampire, and then you gain a card costing up to 5, and then you change the Vampire into a bat. And Bat is another knight card from Nocturne, and it costs 2. It says, trash up to 2 cards from your hand. Remember, this is in the knight phase, so they can't be cards you've played or anything. Trash up to 2 cards from your hand. If you trash at least 1, change the Bat back into a Vampire. So you've got this cycle of the Bat gaining cards, and then the Bat eating other cards and turning back into Vampire. And all throughout the while, it is throwing hexes out at your opponent.
Yeah, so, so I think it's an interesting story how the card came about. Not many cards in Dominion are conceived based on theme, if you believe that. Dominion hasn't exactly had a strong theme. But for Nocturne, during playtesting, you know, a lot of the cards were done, and it was like, well, we want a vampire card. None of these cards are vampire cards. Let's make a vampire card.
Yeah.
So then the playtesters made a vampire card, and here it is. And I do know at one point that you could gain vampires with vampires. and then it turns out that was really powerful, and so now you can't gain vampires with vampires.
So, interesting. Was it really powerful?
Apparently it was.
I have heard, I know from people who play tested with it that it was, like, really, like, seemed like degenerate, but I have to wonder how good it was. Like,
degenerate is only bad if it's actually powerful.
Right, so I don't know. But anyway, you can't. You can gain anything else, though, so...
Yeah, so even duchies. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
Like, you can actually gain duchies with this thing. And hey, duchies are worth points.
Yeah, I think that, like, most people understand at this point that this is quite a powerful card. Nocturne's been out for a while, and I think, you and I both called this, like, the most powerful card in the set.
Yeah, still do.
Yeah, and I would still say that as well.
I mean, that's not saying much. I mean... Yeah, Nocturne doesn't have any huge, like, 10 out of 10 mega OP broken stuff in it.
But Vampire's, like, kind of as close as we get. I think it's a really powerful card. Yeah. So what does this card do for you? And the answer is kind of everything. This card, like, it builds your deck by helping you gain cards. It attacks the opponent, so it's 2 payload functions, and then it also trashes cards. And it's doing all of this non-terminally. So if it has one weakness, it's that it's doing everything. It's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, which is funny because jack of all trades is really good at one thing, whereas Vampire is kind of
Jack
mediocre.
is good at 4 things,
right? Whereas Vampire is kind of mediocre at all these things. But the fact that it's doing all of them for you, even if it's slow to do them. Just make it such a powerful package.
Yeah, generally the more things a card does for you, the more powerful a card is. So actually, you can just look at the word count. You can just copy paste it into a word count. So that's why like Prince and Possession are really powerful. They have a lot of words. I'm kidding. True. That's not true.
So,
but yeah, the fact that it does a lot of different things for you really helps it with being a good card.
Yeah. So, I mean. We want to talk about the deck control aspects of the Vampire, and then we want to talk about the payload. And from there are 2 aspects of the payload. So the deck control is really just trashing, and then the payload of it, we have the gains and we have the attack. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about all 3 of those sort of separately. But,
yeah. Which one first?
Well, let's do the one that you get second. Talk about that first. Deck control.
Okay.
So yeah, so like let's think about the reason that it can be kind of good to like put a vampire in your deck early. I mean, it's a gainer, so that's strong. But really, what we're looking at is that this is a card that can trash cards, and so like there's a really high floor of value to that. Like anything that can trash cards, especially non-terminally, like Vampire can, is something that it's going to be, valuable to put in your deck early on.
Yeah, at the beginning of your game, say your biggest priority is trashing cards, and your second biggest is gaining cards. Mm-hmm. And Vampire plus Bat will do both of these things for you eventually. And so, I mean, I guess that points to you want to have this early.
Yeah, and yet, I mean, and you do want to have it early, and like, it's bad at thinning though. Like I will say, like as a thinner, it's not that impressive. The fact that it's doing all these other things, the fact that it thins at all while it's doing all these other things for you, make it a really impressive package. But like, if you think about it, this is a card that costs 5, so you have to be putting like stock cards in your deck in order to get one. Usually, unless you can open with it, in which case that's really good. But it also flips each shuffle between thinning cards and not thinning cards. So like it's a vampire and it's not thinning, and it's actually giving you a card. And then the bat is trashing 2 cards. So like the net thinning rate is that it's getting rid of 1 card per shuffle. And if the cards
that's a best case.
That's a best case. And if the cards you're gaining with the vampire are stop cards, then the vampire might not be thinning for you at all. So it might actually not be thinning for you, even though it's trashing 2 cards. And, of course, there is some variance in terms of the bat getting to trash cards, because you might not draw it in a hand with 2 cards that you want to trash, because you don't even get to trash with it the first time you see it.
Yeah, what you don't want to do is sit there and not put any good cards in your deck because, well, I don't want them getting in the way of my bat and my bad cards. Don't do that. That's pretty bad. And so by the time you find your bat, which, takes a minute, you're probably going to have some of these cards that you don't want to trash. And if
you might be drawing them with your bat.
Right. So by the time you see all this together, maybe you don't have 2 cards you want to trash, or maybe you didn't manage to find it in that hand. So this leads me to say that one of the more gooder ways to support, you like that?
Yeah.
One of the more gooder ways to support bat as a trasher is to help it line up with the cards you want to trash. Most trashers don't have issues with that because they can just trash the bad cards super fast, and then you don't have that many cards, so it doesn't have a problem lining up with the remaining bad cards. Bat doesn't have that built in.
Yeah, because by the time you put it in the deck, and then it doesn't even start trashing for you right away.
And so that's the other big facet of why bat is not a very strong trasher.
Right.
Because it takes so long for you to actually get that trashing effect out of the bat. You have to buy a vampire, which you usually can't do in the opening.
Yeah.
Then you have to play the vampire and exchange it for a bat. Then you have to draw the bat. So, this is maybe turn 8 by the time you're doing this?
Yeah, and, any number of things can go wrong in between, including having...
You could have a heart attack?
Right. You could have it skipped by your opponent's vampire or whatever. Or the heart attack.
Building could catch on fire?
Yeah. Now,
you just get bored with Dominion and quit?
Right, that's... these are all things that could happen. But, we're being a little too hard on it, I think. It is a card that can thin for you, and it is non-terminal, so you can get more than one of these, and having multiple bats is, of course, going to thin faster than having one vampire turning into a bat. And, you've got multiple of them. Eventually... I usually do end up getting 2 vampires most of my games for whatever I'm using it for, because by the time that the one I'm running low on junk, the bat can just eat the other bat. So,
for sure. If you're worried about thinning quickly,
then
getting more copies of that thinner helps you, especially when it's not terminal. So that's one way you can help with the bat, and the other big way I think that helps with the bat is again, if you can have draw.
Yeah.
By the time you have the bat, and especially draw that you can gain with a vampire, that would be super great.
Right. In most draw you could, because vampire can gain most cards in the game.
That's right.
So the thing is that this is it. I'm talking about this as non-terminal trashing, but it's actually better than non-terminal. Because it's a night card. You can even draw it dead with these draw cards. So, there's a certain, why not-ness to getting a vampire. There's a lot of, we've talked about this vampire doing good stuff for you early on, but also, even if there's other cards that you want that are doing good stuff for you, the vampire being able to gain them kind of leads you to be like, well, why not just get the vampire in the meantime? Because it can get those cards. So, the fact that it's non-terminal ties into it, but the gains are another really big part of
that. So if I'm sitting and looking at $5, and maybe there's a fiver I want that isn't vampire, it can be easy for me to justify getting the vampire because I can just get the vampire now, and then I play the vampire and just gain the other thing that I would have bought.
Right, the opportunity cost is almost non-existent.
Almost non-existent.
Other than the fact that you don't get to play that particular $5 card right away, you're playing the vampire instead. So, the only reason not to get the vampire is if, A, it's better to play the $5 card right away the first time you draw it than it is to be playing the vampire, throwing out a hex and getting a bat. And B, it's, better enough to do that to justify not getting the vampire and having a gainer for more fibers and then throwing out the hex and getting the bat.
Sure.
There's whatever card you want, like, why not just get the vampire instead and then gain the thing?
Yeah, and I would say that, I mean, obviously it depends on what fivers are available.
Yeah, some fivers need to be played ASAP.
Yeah, and the big ones that come to my mind are the ones that do the trashing.
Sure.
Right? If I have a choice between getting a fiver now, like, I don't know, a junk dealer, I can get the junk dealer now, play it next shuffle. Or if I got the vampire now, then I'm getting the junk dealer the following shuffle along with the bat. So now in 2 shuffles I can start to thin. So the bat really isn't helping you justify getting a vampire over another trasher because it's kind of activating at the same time. Yeah. So that's a reason that I would get the other thing over the vampire.
Yeah, but then even in those cases, like, sometimes, like that junk dealer example with a trasher like that, sometimes you can make up for later trashing by doing more trashing and doing it really fast, and maybe if you've been able to, like, put that extra payload in your deck in the meantime, you can be better off for it. Like the junk dealer thing, maybe you get the vampire first, and you eventually have this deck that has the junk dealer and the bat and the vampire, and, like, you're thinning so fast because of that, it doesn't matter that you got behind on thinning early on.
So if I'm going to do that,
it's all stuff to think about. Right?
I'm going to be looking for some really strong draw,
and some, like, good, be doing that, and some incentive payload to be doing that in the first place.
Sure, vampire helps a lot though. Yeah, because it's pretty good payload. I would like to mention though, it now seems like an appropriate time to bring this up. So let's we have vampire, we have bat, and let's just kind of take a couple steps back and look from far away at the overall effect that this is having. And right now I'm sort of putting the attack off to the side. I want to look at the gaining and the trashing. Vampire gains a card, and then the bat, in order to give you your vampire back, has to trash a card. At least one. So during that cycle of vampire bat, during that hashtag thematic vampire bat cycle,
it's either card neutral or it's getting rid of a card.
You're not going to increase the total number of cards in your deck.
Right.
Unless you're going to leave it as a bat forever. Like, unless it never turns back to vampire, then you could do it. Right. But it's not a sustainable thing. Like, it's not like a workshop where, every time I shuffle my deck, I add an extra card because of my workshop. It's not that way. Because every 2 times through my deck, every time I go through this cycle, I haven't increased the number of cards in my deck.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a good way of thinking about it. The advantage of the vampire is, I know you said put the attack off to the side, but that is happening, and in the meantime, it's so much increasing the quality of the cards in your deck. So, like, it's changing these cards out for much better cards.
Yeah, so it's basically just like rats.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Hey, Toby.
So, let's see. Buddy? What are some other times that, like, and that's like a lot of the why notness of vampire is, like, you're wanting to increase the quality of your deck anyway, and this doesn't slow you down to do it with vampire versus just buying extra copies of the card
over the long term.
Yeah, and it might even speed you up. So, like, why not just do it with vampire? There are a few other reasons, like maybe the fivers that you need to be gaining are like a certain kind of attack that you really need to, like, get the jump on, so to speak, and, like, start playing ASAP. Like, you're thinking
like a junker,
Yeah, like a junker is a good one. Also, like, the junker makes it, like, harder for your opponent to line up to, like, get thin with vampires. So, like, that's a thing. But also I'm thinking, like, knights. Like, maybe if you're really trying to spam knights, sometimes it's just really important to start playing them right away. So, depends on a lot.
Sometimes, but also, like, vampire can help you get more of them over the long run.
Yeah, and
then, it can also help you play it more over the long run.
So, it could also die to knights. So, like, it depends on a lot.
Sure, that depends on how lucky you feel.
Yeah. So the other time when I'd say, like, the why notness of vampire kind of wears off, and, like, there's like, the opportunity cost is actually in the forefront, is in the presence of, like, really, really powerful thinning, and I'm thinking about, like, really, really fast thinning to the point that by the time that, like, your vampire is going to turn into a bat, and then you're going to be hard pressed to give it more junk. So I'm thinking about, like, Donate and Cathedral, and maybe even Chapel. Not really Chapel, though, because the bat can just eat the Chapel. But like in those cases, then the opportunity cost of just like buying the Fiver is kind of a bigger deal because you get to start playing the Fiver right away. So at that point, are you going to get a second card with the Vampire?
So in this case, I don't see this as so much an argument against getting a Vampire at all, because having a super thin deck really likes having a gainer that can pick you up a lot of really expensive stuff.
That's true.
I see this as an argument for just building your deck a little differently. So, I remember I talked about how Vampire Bat, the whole cycle there, is not going to add cards to your deck. So when I'm donating down, if I care about that deeply and I want to take advantage of Vampire, then I might leave a couple of coppers around as bat food, so that I can eventually use the Vampire to effectively turn those into good fibers. Right?
Sure.
So I would consider building my deck in a little bit different way and slowing down on the thinning towards the end. It's a little bit like how, Trade Route is my only plus buy. How am I gonna, or like Forager is my only plus, how am I gonna deal with that? Well, you'll have to think about, well, maybe I don't want to buy that fourth Forager and get thin too fast.
Right.
Well, I mean, maybe you don't want to buy a fourth Forager ever. And Trade Route is a little more friendly because it's such a bad card that you don't want to pick up too many copies of it.
Right, you're never going to accidentally get too many Foragers or Trade Routes, whatever. So
that's a conscious and bad decision that you might make.
Right.
Don't do that.
So yeah, I mean that's definitely a thing, and what Adam's saying is absolutely true. Like, being thin appreciates having a gainer, so like maybe you slow down on the thinness to use the gainer more, but at the same time, at that point, you compare your option of getting the Vampire to just getting the $5 card, and like, I don't know. It depends on what this $5 card is.
Of course it does, but I'm gonna say, like, I find myself getting a Vampire like as my first fiver, and potentially my second, and maybe third and fourth and 55th. Like my very first fiver and a few of them after. I find a lot of times I'm getting that Vampire because it's worth.
Yeah, I usually when Vampire's out, it's my first fiver. I'd say most of the time. It's I usually also get a second Vampire. I don't very often get more than that.
I don't very often get 55 of them. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so like, what's another time when like the gains from Vampire might not be worth it? When does Vampire not have its why notness? Basically, I mean, this one's a little more narrow, but like when the card that you want a lot of, that the game is going to revolve around, can't be gained by a Vampire. This one seems obvious, right? But like, there are games where like the Alchemist split is like super important, and you need to be like focusing on that, and Vampire might be wasting your time. Grand Markets, occasionally like something like Nobles, whatever. Vampire can gain most cards in the game, so that's rarer, but look at the board you're playing and think about it. Thinking is pretty OP.
I hate thinking.
I know, but it's really,
I have to do it anyway.
Games,
Rip in peace.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about getting Vampires early. We've talked about getting them a lot. Do you want to briefly mention these attacks just to get this out of the way?
Okay, I will say, like, I have kind of outgrown my hatred of hexes.
I don't believe you. When we were outlining this episode, I was like halfway through, I was typing and it just hit me. I was like, wait a second, we're going to have to choose a kingdom with Vampire in it? Yeah. Which means at some point, Jake is going to get hexed, and it's going to be deluded or envious. And he's going to get tilted and maybe resign the game. Yeah, but there's nothing we can do to stop that.
No, but here's the thing, is like, I get tilted and resign the game over stuff that happens from other attacks, too. So, like, I think that, like, you were pretty on the mark when you said that, like... like, my problems with the hexing attacks are really just implicit to attacks in general.
Oh, man. Anyway. It's been like 2 years since before Nocturne came out that, like, you were salty about a hex that got you. And I was like, so you just hate all attacks. And you're like, no!
I didn't scream it like that, but it was about like that.
That was a dramatization.
Yeah, I mean, I have, like, hated hexes since before Nocturne even came out, but... But now I kind of just get annoyed by them the same way I get annoyed by the rest of attacks.
And the rest of Dominion?
Yeah.
And the rest of life?
Yeah. Actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the attack portion of Vampire
but, you know,
is
it's not
just
all...
like life.
Right. I mean, of course, like, attacks do have more variance typically in games than other kinds of cards do, other kinds of payload.
Okay,
but...
let me just be a little more precise in that statement. If I play one attack card one single time, that has a lot of variance, because if I play a militia and you discard 2 estates, you don't care about who gives a flying fudge bars, right?
Right.
No one cares. But if I hit 2 coppers and then you can't get a thing, and then, that's really bad.
Yeah, in the same way, like, sometimes with Vampire, that kind of, like, represents attacks in general. Like, this attack could do anything.
I hit you with bad omens, but you don't have any coppers. Woo!
Or, like, that's even good for you. Woo! Or I played Locust and I trashed your goat. Good luck.
Wow, he really doesn't. He loved that goat.
Yeah, stuff like that. Okay.
Anyone get that reference, please? Comment section. Go.
Right. So, all right. So the attack from Vampire. We've talked about like the fact that the Vampire is kind of like card neutral.
Oh, I was in the middle of a thought.
Okay, I'm gonna let you finish.
One particular play of an attack card has high variance, but the point is, you don't want to just play a militia one time over the course of the game. You want to play every stinking turn, right?
Right.
So, it stands to reason that with other attacks, like, I don't know, Vampire, you want to play that a lot. Vampire, though, isn't restricted to that once per turn, right? If I have both Vampires in one hand, it's okay. I can hex them twice. Great. So the more times you hex your opponent over the course of the game, the more you can be sure that at some point it's going to mildly annoy them. Or maybe they'll hit Deluded or Envious and click the Resign button.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, these hexes do span the gamut. There is a lot of variance in what the hexes can do, but, like, yeah, there's some like consistent value of annoyance that you can like
consistent
understand.
In quotation marks, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, what do you expect? So first off, the Vampire, we've talked about the cycle of the Vampire and the Bat being like card neutral for you, and possibly thinning, but usually card neutral. So the attack is the part of Vampire that like you're getting for free, quote unquote. This is the added value of the Vampire versus just buying the cards that you would get.
Hashtag value.
So what do you expect out of that? And the answer for me is like you expect the Vampire attack to do a little bit of everything and a lot of nothing.
I feel like your expectations of the Vampire attack should be your expectations of life in general.
Yeah.
Right? The more expectations you have, the more you're going to be disappointed.
Right.
Like when I found out...
That is a good attitude.
When I found out we were pregnant and everyone's asking, like, oh, do you want it to be a boy or a girl? You're the father. You must want a boy. And I said, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any expectations. The contents of my child's crotch are maybe of health concern to me. But, like, at a certain point, that's no longer my business, and that's okay. Right?
Right. It's just like that with Vampire.
The point is, if you have an expectation...
Right. It's like with the Vampire attack. So, like, bear in mind, like, this attack isn't something, like, we've talked about, like, wanting to play any given attack multiple times on your opponent throughout the game to, like, just have more of an impact on them. The Vampire attack is kind of hard to consistently pelt them with throughout the game, so, like, whatever slowdown or disruption you get out of the Vampire hexes, if that's your only hexer, is more of, like, an acute annoyance than a long-term problem. Whatever you hit them with, you're probably not going to be hitting them with, like, over and over again. So whatever it ends up doing, like, understand that the attack from Vampire is like a little perk of the card. It's added value from the cycle of Bat and Vampire gaining you cards and trashing things.
It's like the fact that, I didn't care about having a boy, but then that's why we had a boy,
right?
Which apparently I wanted, right?
Exactly.
Society is telling me that I wanted that, and so that's what happens with Vampire, right? You don't expect anything out of the attack, And that's the way you can find enlightenment. Now you can get the value out of the attack. And Hashtag namaste.
Well, and why do we feel the need to make that point? Because
otherwise you'll get tilted and lose games.
Well, yeah, there's that. But also, like, how does this affect your decision making with Vampire? And I think it actually does have an impact because, like,
I agree.
There are a lot of attacks that you look at and the presence of the attack being there affects what kind of deck you go for, affects whether or not you try to like front run and rush the game end, like buy a bunch of provinces really quickly, affects like, and like certain attacks like make that bad. Like generally any attack slows down like a front running money player and gives somebody else a chance to catch up.
It makes you want to build a little more, yeah?
Yeah, Vampire, I don't think... Vampire helps you build more, so like it does that, but like I don't think that Vampire is like something that you can rely on to like slow down an opponent. I think it's like it's something that like the attack is some guaranteed value, but it's an acute annoyance. It's not something that's like going to give them a systemic problem that's going to keep them from closing out the game.
Sure, it's not like I have this vision of exactly the dickery that I'm going to do to my opponent.
Yeah, I'm not going to play 5 Rabbles on them and shut down their turn.
Yeah, I'm not going to give them the entire curse pile, and now they're going to have the entire curse pile, or I'm not going to make sure that they only have 3 cards in every single hand. I'm going to buy vampires, and maybe if I need to attack them, buy more vampires, and try and play vampires, and hope that it slows them down in this non-specific, ethereal, generic kind of way.
And it probably will.
Yeah, probably will.
And the thing is that, like, yeah, I guess what I'd say is that Vampire is pretty good in almost any deck I can dream up, but Vampire doesn't really have any impact at all on what kind of deck I'm going to build. Like, Vampire doesn't really affect, for me, what the strategy is, because Vampire is such a versatile card, and also, you know, it's such a bad trasher that it doesn't, like, I can't, like, play this deck that needs trashing because Vampire is out. I can't, like, and, like, the attack isn't, like, so long-term disruptive that I can slow down a front runner because Vampire is out. But Vampire goes in just about any deck I could be, like, you know, wanting to build. So, it does a little bit of everything for you, and it doesn't excel at any of it.
Yeah. I think there were, well, the 2 main points I wanted to get to, and I think it might be time to address this fact.
Sure.
You know, a lot of gainers are okay until you want to gain victory cards. Vampire's really great because it can gain duchies, and duchies are worth points.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that it gains duchies not only means that you can justify maybe putting more of them in the deck, but also maybe putting them in the deck a little later than you might do for other gainers.
Yeah, like, there is a perfectly valid play some of the time where, like, you need points, and those points can't be provinces for whatever reason, so you'd be looking at a duchy.
It's like, I want to buy a duchy now.
Right, or, you know, what generic non-province VP here. And instead you get the Vampire. So, like,
Yeah, that's happened to me before.
Right, there are plenty of times where that's a really strong play, but it has some drawbacks as well. But
it's
it also
narrow,
it also has some like really huge upsides. So like I think we should talk about the pros and cons.
Some minor upsides, but yeah.
Well, okay, let's talk about the pros and cons of like buying Vampire for points. Like you've decided, and like most of this comes down to like Vampire is a good card and it can gain points. So like I need points and I'm gonna get the Vampire instead of this other thing that I'd be buying.
Sure. So, like, the main drawback to me seems like I don't get these points right away.
Yeah.
And, you know, once I have the duchy, now I have this bat that maybe I didn't want. So it seems like the window where this is really good is maybe I know I'm going to get exactly one more turn. Mm-hmm. And then now I would think, okay, well, I wanted this duchy, but I'm going to get one more turn. So I know I'm going to draw that Vampire or duchy or whatever it is. So I might as well get the Vampire, because then I can get the duchy later and then throw in the attack.
Yeah, so like the time when you're drawing the Vampire exactly once, and then you're never drawing it again.
And you know you're gonna draw it exactly once.
Right. That's the case where buying the Vampire is strictly better than buying the duchy. Pretty much.
Better.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Yeah, it's strictly better at that point. Unless the duchies are going to run out.
It's strictly better, except for when it's not. So pay attention to that.
What we're saying here is that a lot of the time there is a point in the game where you realize you need to catch up in points, where you realize just buying provinces is not going to do it, and a lot of the time that means you start buying duchies.
So those vampires that you already have in your deck are super great for that, right?
And maybe you even get
and
one
maybe
or two
you
more.
get more. You get like 3 vampires, or maybe 4.
Right, and
or
you would
50
be. And like Adam said, you're getting these later in the game because like they can help you be
later than
kind of a replacement for those duchies you'd be getting. And
later than you would get a workshop.
Right. It's better than to draw a vampire than draw a duchy.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So overall, vampire has these effects. It's got the gainer, it's got the attack, it's got the trashing. It's a variety of effects, and we've talked about cards that have a variety of effects before. We want to look for synergies. One of the things, so like with Governor, there was kind of a game plan all wrapped up into Governor, right? And so anything that would substitute as part of that game plan could allow you to play your Governors for other things. Now, Vampire doesn't have modes in where you get to just completely forgo playing it. Well, if I have other trashing, I can skip the bat and use Vampire for more Vampire things. So that's not the case with Vampire. It's always going to do the thing that Vampire does, or the thing that Bat does.
Yeah.
When it's time to do that thing. So if I'm looking for other synergies, I can also approach this from the standpoint of, what doesn't all of that do? And so with Vampire, didn't like to thin all of your cards.
Yeah.
So in this case, Governor doesn't really like to draw cards. That's not what it does. So I'm looking for a complementary effect. I would say one of the stronger synergies is draw cards, and so we look at everything as a whole, and we can take away, this is what Vampire does, this is what Vampire doesn't do, and that's what I'm looking for if I want to support Vampire, which you're probably getting Vampire because it's a great card. Duchy.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. And that's the episode.
Yeah, no. And to wrap this up, we're going to talk a little bit about a kingdom. And that kingdom, it's going to have Vampire in it.
No way, man.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah. Let's talk about all the cards it has in it.
Yes, let's.
Okay, so it has Caravan Guard, Forager, Guide, Harbinger, Cemetery, Duck, Inn, Storyteller, Swashbuckler, and Vampire. Once more, for our audio-only listeners, we have Caravan Guard, Forager, Guide, Harbinger, Cemetery, Duke, Inn, Storyteller, Swashbuckler, and Vampire. So
you just went through the first time, and like one of the more important cards on the board, and you just said Duck, and like you never went back until the second time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I already read it. Okay, so
it's the new promo card is called Duck.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a board.
All right, we're good. I'm fine. It's okay.
All right.
Vampire seems pretty good here.
Yeah, Vampire does
Duchy Duke! Rah!
Vampire does seem quite good here.
Yeah,
I mean, Inn and Swashbuckler seem pretty good together, too.
Oh, look at that hashtag synergy.
Well, yeah, I think you're fighting over the chest this game.
I think it's interesting because we talked about how Vampire doesn't overall gain you cards, and neither does Forager. And whoopsie doodle, that's the only source of extra gains, except for the treasure chest!
Yeah.
So maybe that'll become relevant.
Oh, I think it most certainly will. I mean,
also, the treasure chest is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Always.
It's especially because we've got Storyteller.
Especially because we have Swashbuckler.
Well, yeah.
Well, especially because you can draw cards.
I mean, like, I think that, like, keeping the chest for a while is going to be a really strong thing to do if you can. And, like, if you let your opponent keep the chest uncontested, I think you just lose. Because They can be like doing lots of crazy stuff with lots of Storyteller draw I think I'm getting a couple of vampires here and swashbucklers and storytellers and inns and
I'm gonna be honest. I don't see myself drawing that many cards.
I do.
So you want to play a deck that draws a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And mad respect for that.
Yeah.
I want to green a little sooner. There's Duke, and I think the Duchy split is super important, right?
I think it can be, but I think that if I build a deck that outclasses yours because you dived for Duchies, I can empty provinces quickly enough that you're not going to get to some like points threshold that I can't catch up from.
That seems very ambitious.
I think what you're saying seems more ambitious, where you're going to get so many points so quickly that I just can't catch up.
I'm not intending to get so many points so quickly. I'm intending to get so many points.
I don't think you're going to... So, like, the Duchy split does seem quite good to win if you can. That said, I don't think losing at 3-5 is going to lose you the game. I think losing at 3-5 and having the same deck as your opponent will lose you the game. But, like, losing at 3-5 and having a much better deck than your opponent, I think you still got a really good shot.
Yeah, it seems like if you're going to go for what you said, and I'm going to go for getting Duchies earlier, then the point of you getting Duchies is to deny them to me, to lower my point ceiling for my Dukes, right?
Sure.
And that seems valid, and I would say that if I only get 5 Duchies, I would have to consider changing plans.
Yeah, you'd have to pivot.
The nice thing about Vampire is it can help you change your plans, right? If I get these Duchies and I decide I don't like them, I will feed them to my back.
No, you won't. Okay.
Actually, well, you're probably a little more likely to do that, right? You're gonna buy the Duchies to deny them, and then whoopsie doodles, my dad ate the Duchy, right?
I don't see myself doing that. For
I
the
could
record.
see it happening.
I don't. For the record, I don't think the Duchies are gonna be so bad for my deck that I'm gonna trash them unless I really, really, really need bat food, and I don't know. I think I'm more likely to keep the Duchies in my deck to deny them to you, but also because they're points and I want them. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to be trying to build a bigger, higher payload deck in the meantime. It's not so much that, like, I want to have the Duchies in my deck. It's more that, like, they're not so bad that they're not worth the points that they're worth. Like, I'm not gonna... They're not so bad that
they're not so bad that they're not worth 3 points anymore.
Yeah,
let's get that on the table right now.
Yeah,
in this game, Jake, Duchies will be worth 3 points.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can't stop that from happening, you son of a bitch.
Which is funny because we just played a game that was about stopping that from happening.
Yeah, it had wall and embargo, and that was funny.
So, I'm saying, like, I'm not gonna trash Duchies to bad. Like, because, like, they're not... Yes, I want to deny them to you, but I also, like, they're 3 points, and, like, it's not... Having that extra stop...
points.
Having that extra stop card isn't so bad for me that I don't want 3 points. Like, you know.
I mean, sure. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, man. I think I want to green a little more earlier and a little more aggressively. I want a lot of vampires. Probably getting some swashies, right? That's going to just be a really good card for the deck. Because, you have a really good shot at getting that coffers.
You're usually going to get plus 3 cards, plus 1 coffer out
You're okay drawing Vampires Dead, which is, A-okay. Primo, just fine Aronia, and the bats, too. I'm probably getting a number of guides. Just finding the vampires and getting that happening a lot seems really good. So I think I want a lot of vampires. On guides and swashies. And,
I don't know about your guides. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not going to get them until I'm already hitting 5, but, like, I want them. In the deck I want, it's not going to be that great, so, like, I just want to find my vampies and get them back. Do you think... the other thing that I was thinking about is, like, Vampire can gain Cemetery.
Yeah, I was
if you want some accelerated trashing.
I don't know about that.
I think it could be good in the deck you want to build. Because I don't want to open Forager.
Well, like I
want to open double silver. Well, for both of these decks, I want to open double silver.
Yeah, it's possible.
I don't want to open Forager. I want to hit the crap out of 5.
Depends what I draw. What kind of hand I draw my vampire in is my answer to that. Because
sure.
If I draw my vampire in a hand of 3 estates, yeah, I'd probably grab the cemetery and without thinking, and like that's great.
Yeah.
But like, man, if I draw it in a hand of like 4 coppers or whatever, it's a little different because I do want to have a Forager in the deck. I want that plus buy.
Yeah, I think the main source of disagreement here is how much do you build, and more specifically, how much do you intend to draw? Right?
Well, yeah, and also you seem to like not want to get Storytellers at all here.
Yeah, my deck doesn't want them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can understand why you would want to throw a couple in your deck, in the deck that you want to build that draws more cards. I get it.
Yeah, okay, so like maybe you don't want them because you're not going to have a lot of treasure gain, but like Storytellers don't sound that bad for the deck you're talking about either.
Swashbuckler just seems better.
Swashbuckler does seem pretty good too. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, look at that art.
Look at that art.
Yeah. Some pretty sick
Saxophone music in the background. Yeah.
Oh, baby. Yeah.
So
I'm actually really interested to hear what people think, particularly Wandering Winder, because if Wandering Winder agrees with me, I know that I will crush you. Like when I'm talking about like this more sloggy deck, like not drawing a whole bunch of cards, but like getting a lot of green cards, especially with Duke and Silk Road. Like if Wandering Winder says that's good, like you're gonna lose to him. You have a 0% chance of winning.
We'll see. I'm pretty confident that like building a little more and having higher payload is gonna pay off.
All right, man. Let's see. So yeah, if you are Wandering Winder, or if you're not, and you are,
we're all Wandering Winder
simultaneously Wandering Winder. Leave a comment in the comment section, or you can head on over to the Discord. You can get there from AdamHorton.com. You can get to a whole bunch of places from AdamHorton.com and get in touch with us. We really like to know what you think about this kingdom, about the podcast. Remember, if you don't want to hear Edge Case with Wandering Winder, you better say something now, because the wheels are turning.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, thank you for listening to the podcast. We got a comment from someone on like an episode from over a year ago that's like, "Hey, I'm listening to these. Here I am now in 2019."
Nice.
And you know what? If when you get here, I don't know how long it's going to take you because you got a few episodes to catch up on.
Yeah.
But
shout out to you, man.
Shout out to you.
All right.
And anyone else who's making the Making Luck quest.
Yeah.
We're glad you made it this far. We're glad you made it as far as you did. And we're still going.
Cheers to you.
It's been a year and a half. And we've made a podcast. We did it, man.
Yeah, we're getting old.
We're going to keep it. Oh my god, my knees.
Yeah, I actually found gray hair, like, in the mirror the other day.
Yeah?
I'm actually graying.
Gray hair is in, though. Gray hair is super sexy. The silver
in
fox
my
look.
scalp, yeah.
Yeah, silver fox look. Anderson Cooper, I think, was the one who popularized that.
All right. Yeah. Well, if I can be like Anderson Cooper, I don't know who that is, actually.
Oh. He's like a news anchor something. I don't know. Did Anderson Cooper popularize the silver fox look? Leave a comment in the comment section.
You remember when news anchors were celebrities? It was a weird like point in American history.
Well, I mean, they kind of are, but
they're like
not really.
Most of like proper news anchors aren't really celebrities anymore. Well, yeah. We have like
because millennials killed news shows,
right? Yeah. We have like personality talking heads that are
that's
that are celebrities,
like pundits.
Yeah. We don't really have like actual like journalists.
What, are we pundits? Are we what you're talking about? Is that us?
Well, we are pushing the silver agenda. So
you could have just said yes, and I would have felt better about myself. And now I'm just confused. What does that even mean? Like, is that like, oh, you're trying to make a I just got it. That was all right. That was really good. Okay. Thanks for listening to Making the Silver Agenda podcast. So here's what needs to happen, and maybe this can happen on the podcast too.
Yeah.
I need someone who knows a thing about coffee. Hi.
Yeah.
To give me a cup of introductory black coffee.
Okay.
So I have not acquired the taste of coffee.
Sure.
But I want you to give me a cup of black coffee for a new guy and say, Adam, if you don't like this, you don't like coffee.
Okay, sure.
I want that cup of coffee.
I can actually take you to a Starbucks that has what's a Clover machine and there's there's a we don't even have to get fancy and get out a French press or anything. There's a Starbucks that I can point you to that can give you that experience because I'm
going there with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Bring in the video camera.
All right,
we're gonna vlog it.
Okay,
this is happening.
Sounds good. Yeah,
we're doing a hashtag field trip on Making Luck, a coffee podcast,
a connoisseur's podcast.